Welcome back to Buckeye Talk. It is time for our game predictions. Ohio State against Maryland, homecoming for the Buckeyes, who are favored by 20.5 points for Saturday's noon kickoff. And it is a point total, an over-under of 71. I'll give mine first. Might get my incorrect prediction out of the way first. I'm taking Ohio State 44-22. Another week where I think Maryland is better than what they showed last week. But I don't think Maryland is going to stop Ohio State. I think this is an offense that's going to be able to do what it wants to do for the most part. But I do think Maryland is going to be able to move the ball a little bit against Ohio State. It's just there's still a gap here. And I think that gap is starting to show itself again. It wasn't apparent in the first few weeks, but I think we're starting to see that gap we're accustomed to between Ohio State and kind of the lower half of the Big Ten. Stephen, what's your prediction?
49-20. Ohio State wins, so kind of just under that total there. I think kind of on the same lines as you. I think this offense is getting to a point where it's starting to click. I think CJ gained a lot of confidence from that game last week, and if the missing element now is just getting Travion Henderson the ball more, I mean, this might be the opportunity, and you combine that with what they're going to do in the passing game, they should be able to score easily. I think Maryland will move the ball, but I think they've moved the ball against most of the Power 5 teams they played. They just haven't put up a ton of points. They've only gone up over 30, gotten at least 30 against one Power 5 opponent, and that was against West Virginia. The other times they got to 20, and then they got 14 last week against Iowa. So I just think maybe they have some successful drives, but they just don't score a lot of points. Ohio State's offense just does what it does. So 49-20, Ohio State wins.
And Maryland's without its best receiver, Dante Demas, going forward towards ACL against Iowa, was a contributing factor to that game. So both Stephen and I taking Ohio State to cover, but the under on the points. Doug, what is your pick?
So the under does feel high, doesn't it?
It does.
Especially when you factor in Demas and when you factor in okay, I guess we think the Ohio State offense is fixed, but it was Akron and Rutgers, right? I mean, do you guys both think that maybe the way that Maryland – because one thing, you're talking about the gap, Nathan, it's sometimes when the gap is there for Ohio State, it's Ohio State scores 56, right? That, not that they're not going to win easily with your two scores, but sometimes it's if you really think they're going to pound somebody, you get into the 50s pretty quickly. Do you think they slow down the Ohio State offense, and keep them under 50 by possessing the ball offensively and moving the ball enough that Ohio State just doesn't – it's not necessarily that the Maryland defense is going to stop anybody. It's just Ohio State's not going to just be forcing 3 and outs all the time and getting the ball back.
I think that is more likely. If you look back at the Maryland game, 7 turnovers kind of speaks for itself. But one of those was a fumble on the play where Demas tore his ACL. One of those was a desperation heave at the end of the first half. So again, 5 turnovers is 5 turnovers if you take those away. But I don't expect Maryland to turn the ball over that much. And I think that affects the line. I think if you're a bookmaker and you're setting this line, you can't assume there's going to be a slew of turnovers. That changes how you look at these teams.
It's that, but then I think an added element of Brian Day never does more than he has to. And so I think if Ohio State's offense does what it's supposed to do for the first 2.5 quarters, and then it goes into hand the ball off, let's get out of here mode, that's part of why you kind of go with the under here, because if Ohio State doesn't need to score 55-plus points to win a game, then they're definitely not going to do it.
Yeah, this under feels like a good bet to me, so whatever that means. I'm also under, but I'm going to take Maryland with the points. I have Ohio State 42-24. So I kind of giggled, Nathan, when you gave your score, because yours is practically the same score. You're 44-22, I'm 42-24, but the difference is you're taking Ohio State minus 20.5. I'm taking Maryland plus 20.5, because I do think, as we said, don't yet confuse the Ohio State defense for the Iowa defense. So don't expect that level of sort of just completely shutting down and discombobulating the Maryland offense. I don't think the Ohio State defense will do that. And also, I don't know that, are we all the way there with finished product dominant without ever stopping Ohio State offense? I think we might be a little short of there, which is why I don't have them getting to 50. And so then 20.5 is a lot. So I'll take that. That's not I don't think the game's going to be in doubt, but I think, it's one of these things. If Maryland had been off last week, it's one of those. The Iowa game is indicative of Maryland. It's not just a fluke, but I also think it might have added a couple points to this line and a couple points to the over-under that is just man, I think if they had played Iowa after Ohio State, they'd had bye last week instead of Maryland might be like a 16-point dog instead of 20.5-point dog. And I don't know, like the over, I don't know, because I think you're factoring, like you said, the over under, you're factoring in like Maryland turnovers and defensive scores for Ohio State. So I really like the under. I'm iffy on the 20.5, but I'll take Maryland with the points, but an easy Ohio State win.
I feel pretty much the same way. And I think if the public money that comes in is affecting the line, I think you had 2 games last week, Maryland, Iowa, and Ohio State, Rutgers, where things got out of hand early and all of a sudden it was a snowball rolling downhill. And it was kind of a unique circumstance and probably affected the final score of those games and maybe affecting how people are betting on this game. Get the text 614-350-3315. Pre-game intel, in-game analysis, post-game thoughts coming to you from Buckeye Talk.